The Man in the Cloak Part 1. The night the forest went silent, they had always been warned about the forest, not the part near the village, where children played and hunters moved with confidence, but the deeper stretch, where the trees grew older, taller. And the markings began, symbols carved into bark no one remembered making, warnings no one could read. That night, 5 hunters crossed beyond those markings. They didn't believe the stories, not fully, and they weren't alone. A young boy followed them from a distance, careful with every step, keeping to the shadows of the trees. He was not meant to be there. Too young. Too inexperienced, but curiosity is louder than fear, until fear finally speaks. At first, the forest welcomed them as it always had, leaves rustled softly under a steady wind. Insects hummed in the distance. Somewhere far off, an animal cried into the night. The world felt alive, breathing around them, familiar, safe. Then, without warning, everything stopped, not gradually, not naturally. The wind vanished, the insects fell silent, even the trees seemed to stiffen, as though something unseen had commanded the forest to hold its breath. The hunters slowed, confusion passed between them in uneasy glances. One of them raised his torch higher, its flame flickering weakly now, casting long, trembling shadows across the trunks of ancient trees. "Do you hear that?" one of them asked. The others listened. There was nothing to hear. The silence pressed in from every direction, thick and unnatural. The boy, hidden behind a wide tree, felt it too. His chest tightened. His breath came slower, heavier, as if the air itself had changed. Then one of the hunters stopped moving. He stood completely still. "What is it?" another asked, his voice lower now. The man didn't respond. Slowly, he lifted his arm and pointed into the darkness ahead. "There's someone there." The others turned, narrowing their eyes. At first, they saw only shadows. Then, they saw him. A figure stood between the trees, tall, motionless, wrapped in a cloak so dark it seemed to consume the torchlight reaching toward it. His face was hidden, not by distance, but by something deeper. Something that bent the darkness itself around him. In his hand, he held a dagger. The blade caught the faint light, but did not reflect it. It twisted it. "Who are you?" one of the hunters called out, trying to steady his voice. No answer came. The figure did not move, did not shift, did not breathe. The boy blinked, and the figure was closer. No sound marked the movement, no step, no warning, just distance. Gone. Fear spread quickly now. One of the hunters took a step back. Shaking his head, "Stay where you are," he said, though his voice betrayed him. The cloaked figure tilted his head slightly, a small, unnatural motion. Then, one of the hunters collapsed. No strike, no contact. He simply dropped. The torch slipped from his hand, falling to the ground. Its flame flickered wildly, shadows stretching and distorting as panic took hold. "Run!" another shouted, but it was already too late. The cloaked man raised his dagger, slowly, deliberately. Another hunter turned to flee. He barely made it 2 steps before his body jerked, and fell lifeless to the forest floor. There was no visible attack, no wound, no struggle, only the result. Death without explanation. Hidden behind the tree, the boy trembled, his hands pressed tightly against the rough bark. His body refused to obey him. His legs would not move. His voice would not come. The last hunter backed away, his breath uneven. "This isn't real," he whispered. "This isn't real." The cloaked figure stepped forward. This time, the movement could be seen, but not heard. His foot touched the ground, and the silence deepened. The air grew colder. The hunter lunged forward with his spear, a desperate act driven by fear. The strike passed through empty space. The cloaked man was no longer there. And in the same moment, he stood behind him. The dagger lifted, and just before it could fall, it stopped. A second hand gripped his arm. Another figure stood behind him, also cloaked, but different. The stillness of the forest broke slightly. A faint breath of wind moved through the trees, weak but real, as though something had pushed back against the unnatural silence. The second man's cloak was marked, lined with faint, ancient symbols that glowed softly against the darkness. His grip was firm, controlled. For the first time, the dark figure reacted. His head turned slowly, not toward the man holding him, but toward the trees, toward the boy, hidden. Silent. Frozen, yet seen, the second cloaked man followed his gaze. Now both of them stood still, facing directly toward where the boy crouched. The boy's heart pounded violently in his chest. Every instinct told him to run, but fear held him in place. The second man tightened his grip. For a brief moment, it seemed as though he was holding the other back, protecting something, protecting him. Then a voice came, not through the air, but inside the boy's mind, "Run." The word struck him like force, and this time, he moved. The boy turned and ran through the forest, branches tearing at his skin, roots catching at his feet. The darkness felt deeper now, the path unfamiliar. Distorted by fear, behind him, there was no sound, and that silence followed him all the way to the edge of the village. He collapsed just beyond the first huts, his body shaking, his breath uneven, his voice gone. When the villagers found him, he could not explain what he had seen. At dawn, the hunters went searching. They found nothing, no bodies, no weapons, no signs of struggle, only a single tree deep within the forest. Its bark marked with a symbol none of them recognized. And beneath it, carved deep into the wood, the shape of a dagger. Days turned into weeks. The elders spoke in hushed tones, warning the others to stay away from the marked forest. They called it cursed. Forbidden. They said the boy was lucky to have returned, but something had changed, because every night after that, he saw the figure, standing at the edge of the trees, watching, waiting, and sometimes, just before sleep took him, he saw the other one, not watching him, watching the darkness. Then one night, the boy woke suddenly, his breath sharp, his body cold. Something rested in his hand, something he had never held before, a dagger. Its blade faintly marked with the same symbol carved into the tree. He stared at it in silence, his hands trembling. Far beyond the village, deep within the forest, two cloaked figures stood once more in the darkness, waiting, because what began that night had not ended, it had chosen him. Stay tuned for the next episode.